with color, sound mix, visual effects, all that stuff.
Let me ask you this. You are, I would say exposed, but you work on so many different types of films. You mentioned dramas and comedies and silly movies and thriller and sci-fi, everything. What do you watch? Can you watch anything? What do you enjoy?
Well, well, I have two little kids, so not that
So
much.
Paw Patrol, you're in Paw Patrol is what you're telling me.
I'm going to the BAFTA screening on the Paramount lot to go see Paw Patrol 2 with my
How
6-year-old
cool.
tomorrow.
Nice. Don't tell mine. I don't want to go.
Yeah, my brother wanted to come because he wanted to see the Paramount lot, and he's in his 30s, and I was like, so are you coming? Am I adding you to the guest list? He goes, you know what? I don't think I can stomach it. I'll see another time. No, I'm actually a huge genre fan.
Yeah.
I always have been.
I enjoy your Twitter snark. That's one of the reasons I said I got to get you on early, because I just enjoy your Twitter snark about it. Mostly Star Wars these days, I think, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I was actually I've been watching the latest episode of Ahsoka in sort of installments.
I'm so sorry.
This morning. Oh,
what are they doing?
I don't know.
I think we're too old for it. I think it's for 20-year-olds who grew up with Rebels, and we just can't appreciate how slow and inconsequential everything is. I don't know.
I made it 15 minutes through the first episode and I was out.
I watched the first season of Rebels at the gym when it first came out, and I just sort of thought it was fine and sort of forgot about it. Mm-hmm. So I've been spending a lot of time on Wikipedia trying to figure out what the hell is going on in that show.
Good grief.
No, I mean I like everything from I do like your classic sci-fi franchises. I mean, I'm named after a DC Comics character, so I have DC Comics stuff sort of baked into.
Oh my God! It took me that long to figure out. It took me that long to figure out. See, oh my God, I'm embarrassed. I apologize.
No, it's a whole thing. I'm Kent, and then our first dog was named Clark. The second dog was named Lois. The third dog was named Olsen, as in Jimmy Olsen.
Yep.
And the fourth dog is back to be named Clark again.
Wow.
This is over a 40-year span of Sanderson family dogs.
You sure you weren't named after a dog you never met? This could be an Indiana Jones type.
Yeah, Clark was a lovely but grumpy fox terrier.
Mm.
So yeah, no, I'm a big fan of mainstream stuff like that. I mean, I'm not a fan of the Snyderverse, but I look forward to all the DC stuff and Marvel stuff generally. Mm-hmm. And then my personal taste in movies is I tend to be pretty filmmaker driven. So I'll usually figure out if I enjoy the work of those filmmakers more than I will personally focus on something like cast or even genre. I mean, anything the Coen brothers make, I'm going to probably watch multiple times. Like it's my style of movie. So, and it's been good because from a work capacity, I think my CEO, Andrew Carpin, I've been working with for almost my entire career at this point. I think we have very different tastes in movies and what we personally enjoy a lot. And I think that's led to a lot of the diversity on the slate. Art of Self-Defense, for example, was something that I had to push so hard to get the company to agree to do. And we essentially fully financed that movie because it was something that I had loved Riley Stern's first movie, a film called Faults with Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Yep.
I was like, we got to do this movie. This is cool. It's weird. I'm really going to enjoy working on this. And no one else aside from my acquisitions team kind of understood what the movie was trying to do. And we ended up forcing it through, and it was a modest success. So, it's one of my favorite movies I've worked on. I actually have a poster signed by Jesse and Riley and Sandro behind my desk. So if you ever, when you're on a Zoom with me, my background isn't blurred out. You can always see that.
It's funny you mentioned just modest success. I meant to ask earlier, a small success, a huge success. How do you quantify, just generally speaking, if something is a success?
One of the things that I learned early in my career, which was literally the way that General Electric, which owned NBC Universal at the time, considered movies to be profitable. And their metric was the green light model at the base case of box office and VOD and all that stuff. You have to earn basically 15% on your investment. Not a huge return, but remember, movies are expensive, so 15% is okay. I would certainly like to have bigger profit margins than that to support, having a whole team of dozens of people working on movies. But that is one of the classic sort of film economics. We tend to look at it. Since the movies themselves cost such a wide variety of budget ranges and P&A spends, it really kind of depends on the movie.
Kent, I work in mental health. I'm a digital media producer. I do a lot of documentary work, podcast work with them, and so forth. I'm curious, with our previous interviews, they're talking about a lot of mental health issues growing, especially in some areas exponentially, in and around production. And I kind of wonder, are you seeing any of these things in the office?
Well, I have the great fortune now, since I moved to Los Angeles a little bit more than a year ago, I work remotely.
Mm-hmm.
But I think yes, like any industry, there's going to be stressful periods, and certainly you can see it on the staff when there's a very big release coming. And I know that, I certainly lose sleep, and my CEO loses sleep when you're approaching opening day of something big, because not only are you worried, but also the amount of work it takes to release a bigger film nationally. You're creating dozens and dozens and dozens of marketing assets for social media, TV, radio, all the stuff, making sure it gets out there, making sure you're paying your bills, making sure you're replicating the DCPs on time. So it's a combination of high stakes and high stress that definitely can take its toll on people. I'm always a little bit at arm's length from the actual theatrical release of the movie, but as a senior executive there, I see just the incredible amount of work that goes into releasing some of these movies. And sometimes it's nice, after we released Mafia Mom, we released a few more smaller films, sort of leading up into Golda, which is our highest grossing film of the year. And that's fun when you have a film that is going to be well reviewed, has an audience who's going to go see it, and you have realistic and very attainable goals that you could meet or exceed. That's a really nice feeling. And what I like about next year in particular is there's kind of no big single film that is going to drive everybody crazy. I think there's going to be a lot of very good movies that have very clear audiences, but that are not so wildly costly. There's certainly some bigger budget movies like the one that has Odysseus, but there's a very reasonable business model behind all of them, and I think that creates a place that's much more fun to work at.
Okay, and my last question, it says on your IMDb that you're involved with an untitled Mike Leigh project, who I'm a massive fan of. And can you say anything about that?
I think the producers, Gail Egan and Georgina Lowe, would buy a plane ticket from London to LA just to burn my house down.
Yeah,
if I revealed anything about the movie.
I figured that. Thought I'd take a swing anyways.
Journalism. That's good, Trevor. That's good.
It's funny because I don't understand the whole Mike Leigh secrecy. It very much predates my involvement in the industry, because he's been making movies in very specific ways for decades. But I will say the movie's fantastic, and it will have a title. It has a title. It is in post, but I'm thrilled with it. So it'll come out sometime next year.
Great! I can't wait. Very excited.
So my last question for you, Kent, before we let you go, is sort of two parts. One is, just sort of what do you see as the future of films that are, coming out in the next 2 to 5 years? But along with that is how does a company like Bleecker continue to be making and putting out, these modest range of films when it appears to a lot of folks on the outside that it's just all about bigger IMAX Marvel movies, and that's what people are going to make, and it's just going to be Avatar and Marvel movies that hits the mass audience. Like, are you, is there still the fear, or is there fear growing of losing just audiences in general for these middle of the road films that are enjoyable, or it's no different than it has been?
I think that a certain segment of the audience after COVID just didn't come back to going to the movies. You know, as our head of marketing says, movie going is a habit. And, you know, pre-COVID, this was always an interesting stat to me because I find it absolutely pathological, but pre-COVID, half of moviegoers would not decide on what movie they were going to see until they showed up at the theater.
Mm.
They would like look at what's playing. They're like, oh yeah, I'll check this thing out.
Mm.
I think that behavior sort of went away during COVID when people got way more familiar with, you know, the on-demand viewing experience. I always say that, you know, the independent film industry was hurt a tremendous amount when grandchildren taught their grandmothers and grandfathers how to use the remote properly.
Mm-hmm.
And that said, there are definite signs of life in the business. It hasn't gone away, and I think that we've gotten into more of a cadence with audiences where you just have to have something that feels like an experience that they want to go see, and you have to believe that you have a core audience that's going to go. That, you know, for example, you know, we don't have a really straightforward art house movie on our slate next year, except for the Mike Lee movie, because we're like, Mike Lee fans are going to go see this movie no matter what. We can count on them to show up and to engage with the movie. It sounds like you, Trevor, are one of those guys, which is
absolutely
great. Gives me a lot of hope. So
yeah.
I think that we're going to see. I don't want to say status quo for a while, but I am curious what's going to happen as I think superhero fatigue is real. I think it's going to take years before we stop seeing the kind of volume that we're used to seeing out of Marvel and DC. But I mean, you can see one is I think Marvel's problem is not necessarily one of lack of quality. I mean, they're still pretty good movies. The problem is that they've now moved on from their core characters and they're just getting deeper and deeper into mythology. And DC has just not been consistent on delivering good movies, and I think has lost some viewer trust. So if those go away, I mean, we're going through an era where you have $2 billion worth of superhero movies going through the pipeline and dominating multiplexes for months with very little else able to, you know, come out. You know, what's going to replace that? Is it more movies like The Creator, which are modestly budgeted and there's a real path to profitability? Is it going to be movies like Oppenheimer that emphasize that theatrical experience? I mean, you know, you mentioned IMAX. You know, there was a lot of hand-wringing in Hollywood when the Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 only had IMAX screens for a week, and IMAX made the decision to give all of those screens to Oppenheimer the week after Mission Impossible opened. And that ended up being such a colossally great decision on IMAX's part. Literally, I mean, Oppenheimer is now around $950 million worldwide. 59% of the gross of Oppenheimer is from IMAX screens.
Wow.
Yeah, but didn't Universal contract those IMAX weeks like 3 years prior? I mean, wasn't IMAX contractually bound even if they thought Dead Reckoning would eclipse Oppenheimer's grosses? Thank God they didn't go that route.
I'm not sure exactly what the deal was, but neither studio was willing to move their release date overall to have a longer IMAX run. But it's clear that people are craving that, you know, premium experience. I mean, 59% of the worldwide gross, and they represent around 1% of the actual screens in the world. That's crazy. Just people wanted to see that on IMAX. So the answer is, I don't know. Something is going to, I mean, sort of like when Westerns fell out of favor, something else had to replace them as sort of the go-to form of entertainment. I'm curious what comes after superhero movies, but I'm not as concerned about the future of the mid-level, you know, indie style movie, because I think the one thing I've learned over the last couple of years is if you get into something that you believe in, with a filmmaker you believe in, and you believe that there is a core audience, even if it's just one core audience that's going to show up to the movie or rent it on VOD, then there's a sustainable business model there, and you just have to have very reasonable goals and expectations.
I have a quick follow-up. What do you think about what AMC pulled with the Taylor Swift concert movie?
I wish Taylor Swift's dad called us. That would have been really fun.
That is a fantastic answer.
I confess. So there was a rumor going around Toronto that Beyonce was